Well, again, Steve here with a few comments about a speech I heard at a Toastmasters club last night. There was a young guy there who was from China, actually, and he did a very impassioned speech about his father, who he greatly admires for I guess for his virtues and so on, and certainly his accomplishments. But I found it to be, he was very emotional, and that emotion came across for sure. But I found the speech to be it's just an amazing story. I mean, it was a reminder that people exist today of the lore of the early settlers of, say, America or North America or whatever. How these people came over here and, you know, cut logs down from the trees, from the forest, and made cabins and lived off of themselves, their enthusiasm, their will to do something, to make a better life for themselves. Well, this guy anyway, this Chinese guy, the story was that he came from a very, very poor rural area in China. This might have been back in the 80s or the 90s or early 90s, probably the 80s. His family lived in a very primitive mud and straw hut, essentially, very small. And they would put a little bit of wood fire underneath their beds. Their beds were made of stones or something. They would heat them up. Like, it was just extremely archaic, you know. And this guy, I guess he had enough. The guy giving the speech explained his father as somebody who has kind of like a fire inside of him, had his drive, you know. So he went to Beijing with 15 RMB in his pocket. That's all he had. That's all he could scrounge up. And he equated that to about $3. So, not a lot of money, in other words. And he became what I would describe as a junk collector in Beijing. He would get going at 5 o'clock in the morning with his tricycle with a basket on the back, and he'd go around the city collecting motors of any kind that he could find. And he would come back home and he would work on them with borrowed tools until 12 o'clock, midnight, whatever. Then he'd do it again. He'd get up in the morning and he would just have some hot water and some of the cheapest cookies that he could find. And he'd have a few cookies at night again. And some other nutrition he'd get was a friend of his who would let him eat some of his food a couple times a week. And he just worked and worked. And now he's an incredibly successful businessman with many businesses in China. And he sent his son to North America to learn English, get a trade, and what have you. But all that from just a fire in his belly somehow. And this really struck me in a way because we really get lazy, don't we, with our comforts. And sometimes the uncomfortable really drives people to become more than they ever would have dreamed they could be. And it just makes me think how much potential we all have and how little we take advantage of that potential. I mean, think about a guy going from riding a tricycle and collecting junk motors, fixing them, reselling them, and just reinvesting. At a certain point, he wanted to grow his business and get his own tools. So he borrowed the equivalent of $100 from somebody. And just before he left the house of this guy's, who would loan him the money, the guy grabbed him by the shoulder and says, "No, I changed my mind. Give me my money back." So he thought he was there, but he still kept going anyway. Just an amazing story. I mean, and the other thing I think about a story like this is, if for a minute I think I got it bad in life, I got a bad deal in life or something like that, I really got to give my head a fucking shake. I mean, I'm serious. Because a story like that, or a story of the pioneers and what they've gone through, is just so orders of magnitude more difficult that I'm just completely pathetic if I'm to complain about it. So I just wanted to share this today anyways. I guess this presentation could be about, or this conversation could be about, counting our blessings and being inspired by the fire that's in some people's bellies to lead us by example. And if the one who I'm speaking about, the one who gave that speech, is listening, I want to just say thank you for sharing about your dad. Sounds like an amazing man. Steve here again, great chatting. Talk again soon. Bye for now.